What's up, guys? We are back with another NECA TMNT review, taking a look at the latest, literally the latest possible release that they've gotten, because I looked out and I ran to Target and they were sitting on the shelf. So of course I had to have a little mini freak out because a toy find, but then we grabbed them. So we got the Triceraton Infantryman and the ROADKILL Rodney 3-pack here. So I have very much been looking forward to this. Triceratons are one of my favorite vintage toys. My daughter and I just ran through the entire 2012 series, and Triceratons are a huge thing in that show. So she and I kind of bonded over our love of Triceratops aliens. So this one is something that I have just really been wanting to get my hands on, and here we are. So we've got these guys here in the standard toon style packaging for the line. You've got the figures in the big window, you've got some cartoon style artwork in the corners for each figure, and then on each side we've got product shots for the respective figures, and then on the back of the box you've got a big shot of all three of them with a little cross sell for stuff we've already gotten, potentially, and then the upcoming Triceraton 2-pack, as well as a little bit of a write-up of TMNT in general. So let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we are out of the package, our Triceraton Infantryman and the ROADKILL Rodney. So I gotta say right out of the gate, this set is pretty solid. There is so much in this box, especially in comparison to the last one. So the previous set is Trag and Granitor, and because of the fact that I guess they have so much new tooling as far as larger figures goes, and there really isn't a lot of stuff to give them, they are relatively bare bones as far as accessories. This set, though, really makes up for it, because not only do we get stuff for every figure you see here, but there are a few little extras that could really go with Bebop and Rocksteady. So we'll get to that, but let's take a look at the figures, see what they can do. The Triceraton is very familiar territory. There's a lot of reuse with this guy, but he still moves in some surprisingly good ways. And then of course our little ROADKILL Rodneys are very unique. So we're going to start with the Triceraton, and then we'll get to our little robot dudes. So as far as moving this big guy around, he very much moves like Bebop, Rocksteady, Leatherhead in particular, because we do have a lot of parts reused from that. But let's get started, see what he can do. We've got some crazy movement on this head and neck. It's a double ball peg. He can look, I mean, super far up. It's almost perfect, really. He can look down. It's better than it looks because he's sort of hulking over, but he definitely sort of lists downwards. You've got good tilt. And then, of course, you've got rotation. His head kind of sits forward, so the rotation is one of those where it's kind of crooked to the side more than a full rotate, but it does work really well. I still just can't get over how well he can look upwards. It's fantastic. The arms go out at the shoulders. They, of course, rotate. You've got a bicep swivel. We've got double jointed elbows there, and then you've got hinges and rotation at the wrists. We've got a diaphragm cut that's actually under the armor here. You can maybe see it peeking through, probably not, but there's a diaphragm cut there, kind of like what Bebop has. I'm pretty sure Rocksteady has it underneath his shirt as well, but he has this armor piece that's attached to the figure, so he can sort of bobble around a little bit, and you can kind of get him to go backwards. Backwards works better than going forwards because he immediately hits his belt, but then it also acts as our swivel. Legs go out. So it's a ball peg there, so it's that newer style leg joint that we're seeing, and then they kick forward. You've got some rubbery plastic there. Kicks backwards. There is a swivel up in there, and then you've got your double jointed knees, and we've of course got some serious rocker action down here, and then you've got hinges which are completely unimpeded. They move all over the place, so he does move pretty well, honestly, and I will say that I did not have to heat this guy up either. Right out of the box, everything in this set just sort of moved pretty well. So I've had no issues in that regard, and he does have some pretty good posability. I'm very happy with the overall general figure, but of course, like Leatherhead, he does have something extra, and you do have to attach this, just like any other. So he's got a tail, and it's the same tail that we get with Leatherhead as well. So you can, tilt it up and down, side to side, and then you can rotate it, sort of angle it a little bit. It's just a ball peg. I did have to heat this up to get it on, which is pretty normal for tails from, this line, Godzilla, stuff like that, and it is a very tight fit once it's on there, but it's going to stay in place, and it moves around just fine. Now, aesthetically, this is, well, I mean, I don't know, do I say this every single time we do one of these? Aesthetically is where this really matters, because we are going for a very specific look. We're going for the cartoon look, and this is not my favorite look for Triceratons. If we were going to get real specific, it's going to be the vintage toy, and then probably next would be the Mirage Comics. But I do have a soft spot for these things, and there's just something about big orange Triceratops men that absolutely do it for me. It's one of my favorite vintage figures, and I mean, despite the fact that these guys aren't exactly really important in the cartoon, like so many other Turtles characters, they look fantastic, and I'm really happy with the way this guy turned out. He very much plays into the cartoon aesthetic with all of the black line work all over it. You've got all the little spots that are painted on there, and it does have that sort of cartoon animated cell shaded look. The armor and everything is a very matte finish, and it just looks really good. It very much looks like he jumped right out of the show. We've got the tail again, like we have with Leatherhead, and I've come to realize after talking to a few folks online about this that this tail is definitely not accurate to the cartoon. They do not have spiked tails in the cartoon, neither does Leatherhead. The assumption here is that this tail comes from the video game figure, which we saw video game Leatherhead long before any of the others, and he has a spiked tail there. So we got this as parts reuse, whether it is or isn't actually screen accurate. I'm not too beat up about it. It certainly doesn't bother me, but of course, you know, it's just something that I've finally realized. It still looks good on him. It's just not exactly what it is. They're sort of just bumpy, really, or more smooth, if anything. But the rest of the figure does very much look cartoon accurate. The armor looks really good. The various shades of just sort of whites and grays, and then you've got little red accents all over him. He is hulking and massive and just a tremendously big figure, just like Bebop and Rocksteady and Leatherhead, of course, because they all very much seem to be within that same realm. And then you've got this head sculpt up here, which is definitely my favorite part because, again, Triceratops man, but it looks fantastic. He's got a great kind of surly expression. There's a lot of detail up in there as far as that line work. You've got the various shades of the purple for the eyebrows, because why not have purple eyebrows on your orange Triceraton man? And then you've got the nice horns with the big frill up there. It's really well sculpted, and again, it looks just like he jumped right out of the show. I'm really happy with the way this figure turned out. For something that isn't necessarily a main type of thing from the original cartoon, this is one that I was hoping they were going to nail, and I've just been really sort of itching to get my hands on this guy, and I really do think they killed it with this one. They've been firing on all cylinders with the Toon line for a long time now, but this is definitely a high point for me. Now, as far as accessories goes, this big guy comes with a decent spread. Some of them, though, don't necessarily have to go with this figure because they very much resemble guns that Bebop and Rocksteady use in their first episode. So we've got some hands to talk about to begin with. So we've got the trigger finger hand here, pretty normal. He's got two slightly style pose gripping hands in the box, and then you've got some gripping hands, although he doesn't really come anything to use with these. You can just use them as fists or whatever you want to do with them. So you've got those. We've got the very Triceraton cannon kind of laser gun here, which this thing's awesome. It's really big and bulky. It very much goes along with the idea of this being this massive alien Triceratops that is invading Earth. And then there's some nice fluorescent orange paint on the inside there. He can hold this really well with this hand, actually. I thought it was going to be problematic, but it fits like perfectly in there. So that's really cool. And then we've got a couple other guns. So we've got this one, which very much resembles the gun that Rocksteady uses in Enter the Shredder is the second episode of the show, and it's this nice big blaster rifle. Of course, the Triceratons can use it, so if you want to mix and match, you can do that, but this will go really well with Rocksteady also. And then we've got this one as well, which is the gun, or a very similar looking gun, that Bebop uses in Enter the Shredder as well. This is really cool. It's very familiar, though, when I look at it, because it also looks a lot like the actual vintage gun that the Triceraton came with. So these are very similar guns in terms of their overall style. Of course, they aren't exactly the same, but they are very similar. So this could be a good stand-in for Bebop's gun, but it also looks like something that we got in the Playmates days. So it's kind of an interesting callback. I'm not exactly sure what NECA's endgame is with these guns, but they do serve a couple purposes, and they all look really good. Now for these little guys, they are the same figure, so we're only going to look at one, and they are, of course, very different from anything else we've gotten in this line, and for good reason. They are just different. So there is some interesting articulation with this guy, and it does some pretty cool stuff. Honestly, I wasn't really sure what to do with some of the stuff that he comes with, but once you figure it all out, there are a million, well, not a million, but there's a lot of possibilities with this guy. So you've got not a whole lot really on this figure as far as articulation goes. The head does not move. It's actually keyed in, so it just sits straight. You've got swiveling arms. These do swap out. They are kind of bendy, but they're not super, super bendy. There are other arms you can use for that. You've got the opening chest compartment here that has the swiveling gun, so it's hinged on a few different levels there, and then it sits down inside the cavity just like that, which is really fantastic. And then you've got a swiveling base right here, so he swivels at the top of the wheel. And then you've also got a rotating wheel itself. Now this piece is separate, but this is the only way you can keep him up. That's why I've got it out now. So the wheel does rotate. It's not loose. It's not anything you're really going to be like rolling him along the table or the ground with, because it's tight enough that he's not going to swivel all over the place. But it does move for whatever reason. That actually makes me wonder why it does really move, but it's most likely just to be able to get him to kind of lean forward or lean backwards and things like that. So he doesn't move a great deal, but at the same time, he really doesn't need to. A lot of the different play value factors with this particular figure, with this toy, come in with the accessory. So he moves just as much as he needs to, and all of it works pretty well. Though just like with the Triceraton, it was again a lot about the looks. At the end of the day, though, what it really comes down to for this figure is the play value, but they have to nail the look, and I really do think that they've got it. Sizing on this guy is really, really well done. Do some size comparisons with both of these figures here shortly, but they did a great job with these Roadkill Rodneys. So of course they're just done up in kind of a matte. It's not matte, but it's a little bit matte gray, and then you've got varying other shades of gray all over them for accents. The wheel is sculpted really well, so you've got like the tire tread in there with some wash in those treads. The gripping arms look really good. Of course, again, kind of bendy, not super bendy, but it works well enough to get him into these kind of signature poses where you've got the arms kind of down or doing one up and one down. And then I really, really dig the arm here as far as the inner arm with the gun. I think that's a great touch. I'm not sure they had to do it, but it's one of those things that NECA would do just because it's something that this guy can do. So I'm pretty happy with that. It does work really, really well to him, so I'm not really concerned about it breaking or anything. It seems to be pretty solid. And overall, the sculpt on this little guy is just fantastic. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. Paint is very crisp and clean. There's honestly not a ton to go into detail on here because he's very much a what you see is what you get. This thing certainly looks like it jumped right out of the screen, and I'd say just mission accomplished when it comes to him. So these little guys have, of course, a number of accessories just because of the fact that they come two to a box. So to start with, we've got the little effect piece down here that I've already showed you. So this is just kind of like a translucent piece of kind of like a dust cloud plastic is really what it comes down to, just to show them sort of moving along. And it's covered in kind of like a light brown paint. So that's how you keep them upright. There's a peg in that. You pop it into the peg hole that's on the wheel, and then they're standing up. But I do like the idea of that because, well, otherwise they'd have to be in a stand or the wheel would have to be flattened at the bottom. So this was a pretty good idea to get that to work. They do have swapping arms as well. This is the one thing that I think might be a bit of a negative for some folks, is that you have the normal arms on them and they just pop out, and then you've got this here, and this thing is kind of bendy, but it doesn't really want to like stay. It'll go back to this coiled shape, which does work really well as far as them capturing someone. There's only two of these in the box, so you either have to share one for each or one is going to go without. So you'll have one regular, one extended. You get to mix and match. So that might be a bit of a negative. Maybe not the biggest deal. My favorite aspect of these figures, though, is how they kind of showcase some of the different abilities that they can do as far as the drill and what you can do with that. So I'm going to we'll move this one aside, and we will talk about the drill attachment. So it's kind of interesting how to do this, and you might need like an X-Acto blade or something in order to do this, but you actually pop their lids off. This piece actually comes off, and then you can put the drill on. So there are two drills in the box, and of course, they come up to the ground, and that's when they steal Bebop and Rocksteady from the zoo, or the Rhino and the Warthog, rather. And you've got that. So if you want to have the drill on the figure, you've got that option. But, like I said, you can take the head off, and you can put it inside of this. So this is a ground effect piece that allows you to have the heads coming out of the ground, which I think is pretty fantastic. That's really cool. I'm really, really happy with the way this turned out, and just the idea of it works quite nicely. Of course, it's done up in kind of a cartoony look with the really matte brown paint, and it just looks like they came right up out of the ground. Now, there is one other option, and you do get two of those as well. There is one other thing that you can get, which actually works with the head as well. So pop the drill off, take it out of the ground base, and then we'll move old Rodney back and pop his head back on. Again, it's just keyed, so it always goes on in the same way. But he's got another option. So we've got this one here. So you've got a battle damaged head. And in the show, one way that they get destroyed is that Raph jams his side down in through the head. And that's what this is for. So those are psi holes. So you pop that in there, and then you can have Raph coming down and putting his psi right through the head. So you've got a number of options when it comes to how you want to display these guys. You've got battle damage, you've got the ground effect, you've got the drill head, you've got the different arms, and then of course you've got the effect base pieces. So not only do they come with some really cool stuff, they come with a lot of it. Now, as far as size comparisons go, let's kind of start with just things within the line. So we've got Rocksteady here to give you an idea of what they look like with a relatively large figure. So the Triceratons will stack up to Bebop, Rocksteady, Leatherhead, Trag, Granitor pretty well. He does seem a lot taller because, of course, he does have the frill on his head, but as far as the overall body, they're very similar. And then we've got our Roadkill Rodney to give you an idea of just how tiny he is, but he still has some good size on him. He's not super tiny, but he is very much diminutive by comparison. Now, for something a little bit more in line with the Rodneys, there's our Leo to give you an idea of what he looks like. So he very much is dwarfed by the Triceraton, and he still has some size on the Roadkill Rodneys, but not too much. And then here is a Foot Soldier, just to give you an idea of what they look like alongside these guys. So a lot of size difference between the figures in this set. Triceraton is absolutely massive. Roadkill Rodney is, of course, quite small. Now, for some other figures, of course, we'll go with the trusty Beskar Mandalorian to give you an idea of what a Black Series figure looks like. And then a Marvel Legends. So here is the recent Fox Wolverine. And then how about, I don't know, something that is a little bit larger. Here's the Wicked Cool Toys Master Chief in a very awkward pose because I'm not going to take the time to pose him right now, but he is very much comparable to the Triceraton in terms of overall size. So you can see that there's a lot of plastic in this box. And then here's one more for good measure. Here's our Cobra Commander. So Triceraton, big, Roadkill Rodney, small. That's basically what it is. So overall, there is, I don't know, nothing that I want to complain about when it comes to this set. The figures move incredibly well. Again, the only thing I needed to heat up was the tail just to get it on. Nothing else had any issues in terms of stuck joints on either figure. The sculpt, paint, the aesthetics, the overall design of all of these is incredibly well done. They all look like they jumped right out of the show. Triceraton is a big, monstrous figure. The Roadkill Rodney is small, but we get two of them, so it really makes up for the fact that it's a smaller figure. There's a lot in this pack, and it's very much hard to overstate that. There is just so much in this pack. Not to mention the fact we get a ton of great accessories, stuff for Bebop and Rocksteady. The Roadkill Rodneys have a ton of options when you mix and match those parts, and the Triceraton has 3 guns if you don't want to give those to Bebop and Rocksteady. You can mix and match your Triceraton army when you get a few of these. So this is one to not miss if you're interested in these particular characters. These may not be for everyone, but this is a very well done army builder pack, and I think NECA absolutely killed it. So that's going to do it for this look at the NECA Toys Triceraton Infantryman and Roadkill Rodney 3-pack. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.